Well, I'm glad you guys were able to make it tonight. Thank you. What are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about relativism. If you don't know what relativism is yet, you will soon. Okay? Relativism, basic claim of relativism is there is no absolutes. Nothing can be absolutely true or false. Okay? But I ask first, why are you here tonight? Right? I'm hoping that you are here for one of two reasons. One is you are searching for the truth, trying to find out if Christianity is true, or that you are a Christian and you are here because you know that you need to be able to make a defense, not only to bring other people to Christ, not only to protect your own beliefs, but because we're commanded. 1 Peter 3:15 tells us to always be ready to give a defense for the hope that you have within you, and to do it with gentleness and respect. See, we're all commanded to do this. And remember, we're all commanded to do it with gentleness and respect. These are people that we are talking about with true feelings, true emotions, true hearts. So if we're talking about things like this to people and we're coming off aggressive, what is that going to do? Is that going to bring them to Christ? Absolutely not. Okay? But like I said, so on one hand we have relativism, which society is claiming that nothing can be absolutely true. But on the other hand we have Jesus, who says that he is the way, the truth, and the life. We have a big problem here, don't we? One that needs to be dealt with now before we can go any further. Because you know what? If relativism is true, it doesn't make sense for us to do any more classes. None at all. Because none of it would be absolutely true anyways. Right? C.S. Lewis said it this way. He said, Christianity, he said, if false, is of no importance. If it is true, it is of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. I know I do, and I know you guys do as well, those of you that follow Christ. Far too often we put him in the moderately important camp. We have the areas of our life where it's ours. We try and keep it to ourselves. God doesn't need to go into this part. And then we have the other parts where, yes, God, come in, especially when I need help. Come in. It is my prayer that as we go through, the more you know about God, the more evidence that you see that points to God and to Jesus Christ and makes it so well beyond a reasonable doubt you know that God exists. I hope once you get to that point, you will let those doors of those hidden areas of your heart swing wide open and let God come rushing in. So, like I said, we're going to talk about relativism. Now, the Webster's definition of relativism is knowledge, truth, and morality exist in relation to culture and to society, and therefore cannot be absolute. That's the claim here. When we go forward, though, how can we have faith in anything? How can we have a belief in anything if nothing can be absolutely true? I want you to imagine with me for a minute here that there's this little girl that comes into class for show and tell, and she brings her little puppy. She goes up to the front of the class and she's holding that puppy, right? Like all little kids do. They hold it like this and the head is here and the body's just a dangling. But that puppy is happy no matter what, just to have this little girl hold him. Then she goes on to tell the class, to tell her little friends about the puppy, right? She tells where the puppy sleeps, where the puppy plays, tricks that the puppy does, the puppy's name. And all of a sudden a little boy from in front yells out, "What is the puppy? Is it a boy or girl?" And she goes, "You know what? I don't know. My mommy and daddy never told me. I don't know." And a little girl from in the class then yells forward, "Let's vote on it." Whatever the vote is will be what that dog is. Does that seem to make sense? Because if relativism is true, that is the closest that we can get to an absolute, is by majority. Ravi Zacharias, I don't know, some of you guys may have heard of him, some of you may not have. He's an apologist. Okay? Apologist, first of all, is not apologizing for something. Okay? Apologist, the word apologetic, comes from the old word apologia, which means to give a defense. Okay? But Ravi was talking at a university about relativism like we're talking about tonight. He said when he had gotten done talking about relativism, a professor from that university came forward to the mic for the Q&A session, and he was mad. And he told Ravi, I have never seen somebody make such a mess out of a way of thinking. I want you to come to my class on Monday morning. Myself and my students will chew you up and spit you out. And Ravi goes, well, as inviting as that is, as inviting as that invitation is, I'm sorry, but I have to be elsewhere. But we could meet for a meal and talk about it. And they end up getting to the eating place, and Ravi gets his food, the professor gets his food. Ravi starts eating. The other guy grabs placemats. He starts writing out different stuff all over the placemats. And by the time he's done, he's grabbed placemats from all the tables around him. He's written out tons of stuff on there about why Ravi's way of thinking is false. It cannot be. And see, it boils down to this. He told Ravi that you are in error because you have a Western way of thinking. You have an either-or way of thinking. Something either has to be this way or this way. Okay? But what you need to have is a both-and way of thinking, an Eastern way of thinking. Now, this isn't saying that I have either a blue shirt or a red shirt that I could choose from to wear today. This is saying that the shirt I'm wearing is blue to me, but you could say to you it's red. See, it's either blue or it's red. Doesn't really matter, whatever you choose, whatever is your preference. Ravi let the guy talk, and he finally was able to get in a word edgewise. And he asked him this. He said, now, you are telling me that I am in error. I am making a mistake. I'm making a huge mistake because I am using a Western way of thinking. I am using an either-or way of thinking. The professor goes, you're right. And then Ravi goes, but what I need to have is I need to have an Eastern way of thinking. And the professor goes, yes, now you're getting it. And Ravi goes, can I have both ways of thinking? And the professor goes, that's ludicrous. No, of course not. Ravi goes, you know what? I don't think you understand. Let me say this again. You are telling me that I cannot have an either-or way of thinking. I have to have a both-and way of thinking. Can I have both an Eastern way of thinking and a Western way of thinking? Ravi said that the professor's face kind of went blank. And then he said this. He said that the either-or does seem to emerge, doesn't it? Ravi says, you know what, I can make it worse for you? Because even when I was in India, when I was born and raised there until about the age of 18 or 20, I don't remember exactly which. But he said, even when I was in India, when we would come to the road, we would stop and we would look both ways. Because it is either going to be the bus or it's going to be me. It cannot be both of us. That's what it boils down to here, doesn't it? We either have to have an either-or a both-and way of thinking. So which is it? I hope, is my prayer tonight, that when you leave here, you will never again stop and think, you know what, maybe relativism is true. Maybe I can just have this both-and way of thinking. Excuse me. Like I said before, our definition of relativism basically comes down to that all truth is subjective, it cannot be objective. That's Webster's definition. Okay? So, can it be subjective or objective? Does it have to only be subjective? Can it be objective? We are going to run through 4 rules to be able to test statements. I'll give you the rules. We'll go through some examples, and it'll make more sense as we go. Excuse me. First rule is, if your opinion can change the statement, then it is a subjective claim. Okay? Second one is, if you can disprove it, it is, if you can disprove it, it is objective. If you cannot disprove it, it is subjective. Okay, if it is impossible to. If it is an objective claim, it is a truth claim whether you like it or not. The fourth rule is if it is an objective claim, it is a claim that it is true whether you choose to believe it or not. Okay, so those are our 4 rules. It'll make more sense after we do a few here, okay? First one is, the best color is blue. Is that subjective or objective? Right? Well, let's hold it to the tests. Can your opinion change it? If I make the statement, you know what, the best color is blue, and then I change my mind a bit later and say, you know what, no, I really think I like red best. Would that change that statement? Absolutely, right? Now, you cannot disprove a subjective claim. If I said that my favorite color is blue, could you ever prove that wrong? Of course not, right? I could say my favorite color is pink and you wouldn't be able to prove it wrong. I would be able to because my favorite color isn't pink. What about this one? The grass in our lawn is green. Is that subjective or objective? Let's hold it to the tests, right? Can my opinion change that? If I turn around and I want to say, you know what, the grass is blue, does that actually change anything about the grass? Does that change anything about that statement? No. See, here's the thing. If I can change that statement by my opinion, remember, it is objective. My opinion cannot change this statement. Can you prove that the color is green? Absolutely. You can get the definition of green. You can get the color spectrum of green. You can hold it up to it and see that the grass is indeed green. What about objective side of it? Can we test that? Of course. Whether I like it or not, or whether I choose to believe it or follow it or not, that grass is green. Right? Make sense? Okay. How about this one? Pastor Scott is an astronaut. Now that's a pastor at our church. Can we test that statement? Of course we can, right? Now, can my opinion change it? If I said that, you know what, I really want Scott to be a baker, does that change it? No, not at all. Can I disprove it? Can I disprove that Pastor Scott is an astronaut? Of course. Come to our church on Sunday, you'll see Pastor Scott. Okay. Check NASA's registry. You'll see that he is not an astronaut. Whether I like it or not, or I choose to believe it or follow it or not, that makes that an objective statement because it does not change it. Okay? My grandma lived to be 98 years old. See, this one is a little bit harder because you don't know. But we still can see if it is subjective or objective. Okay? Does my opinion change it? If I really, really want my grandma to be 99 before she died, would that change it? Sadly, no. Right? Can you disprove that claim that my grandma is 98? Yeah, you can. You can go and get her death certificate. You can see that, unfortunately, she passed away when she was 64. Whether I like it or not, or I choose to believe it or follow it or not, I cannot change that statement, can I? That is an objective statement all day long. What about I am hot? Is that subjective or objective? See, people tend to get confused once we get to this point. Okay? And the claim is this, that you can't say that that is an objective statement because there's somebody in Antarctica or somebody in the North Pole or wherever and they are cold. Yeah. But this isn't about them, is it? This is saying that I, Nate Evans, at this moment in time, am hot. And I am saying it is true for all people, at all places, of all times, that I am hot right now. Okay, that's the claim. This is why the whole somebody is cold in Antarctica doesn't work. Now, we can test this still, can't we? Can my opinion change it? If you lock me in a room where it is 130 degrees and I have sweat pouring out me and you're looking through the window into this room and I turn around and tell you, you know what, I'm cold, would that change it? Of course not. I'd still be pouring wet with sweat. Could you disprove it? Of course you could. You could use a thermometer. You could just point out that I'm sweating, right? Whether I like it or not, or whether I believe it or follow it or not, will not change this statement, will it? I am still hot. This is an objective claim. Now remember, why are we doing this? Number one, so we can get on the same page. Number two, because relativism is the claim that no objective things can be said. No objective truths can exist. Nothing can be absolutely true or false, right or wrong. What about this one? This one, society will tell you all day long that this is subjective and it can never be objective. This claim here, the God of the Bible created the heavens and the earth. Is it subjective or objective? Well, if it is true, which as we go through this class, we will show that it is true. Beyond a reasonable doubt, it is true. Excuse me. Can my opinion change that? If I don't want God to exist, if I am like Christopher Hitchens and I despise God, if I am like Richard Dawkins and I really do not want God to exist, does that change anything? No. If God exists and He created the heavens and the earth, then God exists and He created the heavens and the earth, right? My opinion cannot change it. You can try to disprove it. I invite you to disprove it. I invite you to try, because I don't think you can. Okay? And whether I like it or not, or whether I choose to believe it or follow it or not, this claim is a claim of truth. It is an objective statement. All of this talk about relativism, a lot of you guys, I'm sure, have not run into it yet. So why are we spending all this time talking about it? It's because in 2002, that was the last poll that I have seen that was a very widespread poll, looking at many different demographics, people types, everything. It was done by the Barna Group. And what they had came up with was 64% of adults in the United States believe in relative morality. They believe that nothing can be absolutely right or wrong, absolutely true or false. 64% of adults. For teenagers, it is much worse. Only about 6% believe that something can be absolute. The part that shocked me is this next one. He said that only about 32% of born-again Christians believe in absolutes. That means only 32% of people that follow Jesus, the one that says that He is the way, the truth, and the life, believe Him. The rest don't. Here's a quote from Alan Bloom. Okay, he was a professor at the University of Chicago. He had written this book in 1987, and it was called The Closing of the American Mind. And in this book, he had said this. He's talking about students that are coming into the college scene. He said that about 95% of them assume relativism to be true. Okay? Upon graduation, 95% of them assume relativism to be true. Then he says this, 4 years of college cements that belief. This was in 1987. Where does this start, though? We've looked at 2002 with the Barna Group. We've looked at 97 with Mr. Bloom. As far as I know, it started with this statement, this quote, and most of you guys have heard this. Man is the measure of all things. Okay? But you see, it's the rest of the quote that pulls the relativism in. And it's this, man is the measure of all things that which are, that they are, and of all things that which are not. Okay? But it's this next part that really does it. Okay? It says, consequently, any given thing is to me as it appears to me, and it is to you as it appears to you. That's relativism, isn't it? It's saying, whatever is true to me can be true to me, and whatever is true to you can be true to you. There is no absolutes. Now, this is written by Pythagoras. I don't know exactly when he wrote it during his life, but I know that he was born in 500 BC and he died in 411 BC. So this has been around for a long time. It hasn't started to take a foothold until the last 30 years or so, 25 years or so. Okay? So we have seen what relativism is. We have seen how big of a problem it is. And we have seen the claims about the objective and subjective. And we have seen that already in that area it started to fail. Right? Where do we see this entering our lives? Those of you that are going to be going off to college will see this as soon as you step into that university. Okay? But I've kind of funneled it down into 5 main ways that we see this entering into society, entering into our lives, being what we are told. The first one is objective relativism. That is the poster child of relativism. That is a claim where what's true for you can be true for you. What's true for me can be true for me. There is no absolutes, right? That's what we've been talking about tonight, okay? The next one, though, is what, unless you've been living underneath the rock, you have heard this. It is called religious relativism. And what this claims is all religions are basically the same and all religions can be true at the same time. The claim that all religions lead to heaven, right? This is what Oprah claims. This is what a lot of other people claim. But look at it this way. How can they all be true? Christianity claims one God, the triune God. Hinduism claims 330 million gods. One God and only one God, 330 million gods. Does that work? I don't think it does. I don't see how it could work. We proved it right there that we already have a big problem, right? A guy named Steve Turner, he has written what is called the Atheist Creed. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek creed of what atheists believe. Okay? But about in the middle, he says this. He said, we believe that all religions are basically the same. At least the one that we read was. Right? I think that sums it up. Because most people that are making these claims, most people that are claiming that all religions can be true, if they know anything about a religion at all, it's only one of them. But the rest of that paragraph, I think, sums it up the best. Okay? He says, they all believe in love and goodness. They only differ on matters of creation, sin, heaven, hell, God, and salvation. So they only disagree on everything, right? But yet the religious relativism claims that they all can be true. Next one is cultural relativism. Okay? This is what is deemed right in one culture can be okay for that culture. What is deemed right for another culture can be all right for another culture. We're not talking here about driving on the left or on the right or legal drinking age or voting age or anything like that. I think what sums up this stance best is the Nuremberg trials, right? So following World War II, all of the commanders and generals and doctors that had been involved in the horrific things done in Germany were put on trial. And we heard the same exact defense over and over again, and that was this. Well, that may be wrong in your society, that may be wrong in your country, but it is all right in our country. It is acceptable in our country to take and throw 11 million people into a furnace. To do horrific experiments on little children. To take and cut the limbs off and take the ones that were on the right side, sew them onto the left side, take the ones that are on the left side, sew them onto the right side. That is okay in Germany. If it's not okay in your country, well, that's on you. That is scary, isn't it? That is where we are headed. Headed right back to what my grandparents knew was hell on earth. If you don't know much about World War II, I implore you to please go and research. Because the only way that we don't make these same mistakes is if we know about them. Read Elie Wiesel's book, Night. See, this happened to Elie when he was a young boy. Nazi Germany had really set into place, and he gives the account of what it was like to live during that time. If you for a second think that moral relativism is true, please read that book and get back to me on it. The next one is aesthetic relativism. I almost talk here, right? This one it has more to deal with art. This is beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that type of thinking. Now, hopefully you will have seen that there is a little bit of truth in each one of these, right? There are some things in one country that is okay and some in another that is okay, driving on the left or right, stuff like that. And there is truth that some things are beautiful to you that I find not attractive and vice versa. But here's the thing, is all art free game? See, because that's the claim. So, is it though? Look at Elisa Schultz. This is a lady that was a student at Yale University. And what she wanted to do for an art project, what she wanted to do for an art project was this. She wanted to artificially inseminate herself, and then on the 28th day, take abortion medication, and then videotape the results, the discharge that came out of her. This was supposed to be a video of art. Does that seem okay to you? Or does that seem to fall more into a moral category? See, art fails to be art when it starts to dehumanize, when we start crossing those lines. Another area is when we go back to what we were talking about a minute ago with World War II. See, when the Soviets had came in, and they had came into Auschwitz concentration camp, They had liberated everybody, and they were left looking at these horrors. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the pictures of this. Human beings that are down to no weight on them at all, that had died and stacked up like flour sacks. Piles of shoes, piles of clothes. And some of the experiments I had talked about. But then this, claimed to be a type of fashion, claimed to be a type of art, was these hair nets and purses and bags that were made out of human hair. See, these had been made by taking the hair off of the Jewish people. And when the Soviets had came in, they had found basically a mountain of human hair, about 16,000 pounds worth of human hair. Okay, this was their artistic ability to be able to use this hair to make these products. Does that stay in an artistic stance, or does that fall back into the moral stance? Because remember, if relativism is true, then nothing can be absolutely good or wrong. So how do we deal with this? I hope that you're starting to see a huge problem with the theory of relativism. But how do we deal with it? When we're talking to somebody, how can we show this to them? First way is the law of non-contradiction. This is the exact opposite of what relativism is. See, the law of non-contradiction is saying that two opposing things cannot both be true at the same time. What does this look like? Well, remember before when I gave the example of my shirt? My shirt can't be both red and blue at the same time. See, we can use the law of non-contradiction to show them that their theory does not work. Now, there is a quote from a Muslim philosopher. I don't like what he is saying, but let me just say it and then we'll talk about it. How about that? He says, anyone who denies the law of non-contradiction should be beaten and burned until they admit that to be beaten is not the same as to not be beaten, and to be burned is not the same as to not be burned. See, here's the thing. I'm not saying that we should go around beating and burning anybody. Absolutely not. But if we show that the opposite cannot be true at the same time, they have no choice but to see it. They can still deny it to your face, but inside they're going to know that there's a big problem here. See, to be flicked in the ear is not the same as to not be flicked in the ear, right? That's the first way. The second way is called the roadrunner tactic. Now, hopefully all of you guys have seen the cartoon of the roadrunner and the coyote. It's the best cartoon ever made. And what always happens? You have the coyote who wants a roadrunner to eat, right? So it always opens up with him getting something from Acme. It's most of the time a big creation of some sort that helps speed him up or drop something on the roadrunner. But what always happens, they always end up running down the road, and the coyote is getting closer and closer and closer, and the roadrunner zips around a curve, and the coyote goes running off the cliff, and he's running in midair. And he does not know that he is not standing on solid ground until what happens? Until he hears that meep meep coming from the roadrunner. Then what happens? He plummets, right? See, what we need to do is we need to show that two opposing things cannot both be true. And then we need to show them that they're not standing on solid ground. So let's look at some examples, some of the most basic ones. These are some of the most basic ones that you will hear. See, you will hear the claim, there is no such thing as truth. Is that true? See, that claim, there is no such thing as, is in itself a truth claim. We have the law of non-contradiction, right? We have the roadrunner tactic. Is that claim really true? Is that claim itself true? You're saying there is no such thing as truth. Is that claim true? Should I be listening to that? What about the poster child? That's true for you, but not true for me. Is this statement true for everyone? Or is this statement only true for me and you? See, this is a claim that is supposed to be true. It can be true for you, but not true for me. And that's the only truth that exists. That's the claim, right? What about if you get told, we can't know truth? How do you know that? Right? We can't know truth, but yet this one person that is telling you this can know that it's true that we can't know truth. See a problem? You see an overarching problem, how there's one truth claim that no other truths can exist. There's one absolute that no absolutes can exist. That's what you'll see over and over and over again. What about this? Straight out of a college textbook, all truth is changing and relative. Is that statement changing and relative? Is that statement still true or has it changed? What about the claim, there is no truth in religion, only in science? Does that one seem to work? Here's the problem. Is that a scientific claim? There's no truth in religion, only in science. Is that a scientific claim? Is that a scientific experiment? Is that a scientific fact? Because it's saying that it only can be if it's science. So you see, that statement doesn't even hold itself up. What about we must doubt all truth? Should we doubt that? Should we doubt that we doubt? Should we doubt that we doubt that we doubt? One thing you'll find is skeptics are never skeptical about skepticism. I'll say it again. Skeptics are never skeptical about skepticism. We must doubt all truth, but they don't doubt that very claim. So, what does this look like? We've looked at these statements, right? What does this look like in reality, though? If we try and put relativism to work in our society as a whole. See, what ends up happening is people grab relativism and they say it works in this little category, it works in this little category. Can it work through all of society? I'm going to show you something. I am going to show you the best car ever made. Okay? This is the car that beats all cars. This is the car that makes Corvettes stay in their garage and not want to come out and see the light of day. This is the car that makes Lightning McQueen pee himself. See, this is a 68 Mustang Shelby GT 500 KR. Stands for King of the Road. This is my dream car. Now, staying with relativism, imagine if I found this car for sale and I needed $70,000. So I march into my bank and I tell them, you know what, I found my dream car. I need $70,000 out of my savings account. Well, sure thing, Mr. Evans. They type it up and, ooh, I'm sorry, Mr. Evans, but you only have $38 in your account. Well, that may be true for you, that I only have $38. It's true for me that I have $70,000. Give me my money. Does that work? Of course not. Now imagine that I was mad. I was mad because they wouldn't give me my money. So I went storming out of there. I got in my truck and I took off. And as I'm barreling down the road, I blow right straight through a red light and I run into the side of somebody. There's witnesses on the side that saw the whole thing happen. There's skid marks on the pavement that when the cops come, they start looking at. They talk to the other driver. They talk to the witnesses. They even call in and review the footage from the camera above the stoplight. Then the officer comes up to me and turns around and says, Mr. Evans, you ran the red light. Here is your ticket. You are responsible. How far do you think I would get if I turned around and said, yeah, that's your perspective. My perspective is, it's his fault. I'm going home. He needs to fix my vehicle. Is that going to work? Of course not. The reason is because we demand absolutes, don't we? We demand absolutes all the time. We demand absolutes when it comes to safety, right? The cars that we drive, we demand that they're safe. We demand that they're reliable. And we demand to know this for sure. That's why car companies spend so much money destroying cars by running them down crash test lanes into brick walls. That way we can know the truth about how they withstand incidences. We make sure that they run them for many, many, many miles so that we can know that it is reliable. That way we can know how many miles per gallon it gets. We demand this type of stuff. Would you buy a car if somebody told you, I have this car and, to me it's an awesome car. To me it's the best car. Well, what type of gas mileage does it get? Well, to me it gets 42. I don't know what it'll get to you. Is it a safe car? Well, I feel as it is. Are you going to buy that car? How about if you go to a gunsmith and he makes guns and he's trying to sell you this gun and you ask, well, how safe is it? I perceive it to be safe. Have you ever shot it? Well, no. But I feel that it's safe. I feel that it's a good gun. You going to buy that? See, we demand absolutes. We demand truth in safety, right? We also demand it when it comes to toys for children, right? We demand that it is true that these toys will bring our children joy and not a funeral. We demand absolutes in safety. We demand it in financial. It wouldn't work at my bank, me just telling them it's true for me to give me this much money, would it? How about if when we get done here, we all go to the nearest gas station and I turn around and I tell everybody, you know what, I will buy each one of you a candy bar and a can of pop. And we get up there and the bill is, $122. And I turn around, I give them $400 cash and they give me back a nickel. And turn around and tell me, well, I perceive that as what you get back for change. Have a nice day. Is that going to work? Of course not. Excuse me. What about our justice system? We definitely demand absolutes there, right? If when we get done tonight, if I went out and I killed someone for the fun of it, and then I was caught, I was put in jail until my trial, and then I had to go in front of the judge and a jury, and they looked at the evidence and they found that, yep, you killed her, you killed him, and they sentenced me to how many ever years in prison. And I stood up and I said, well, thank you, Your Honor, but you know what? To me, this is acceptable behavior. This may not be all right for you, but for me, this is all right behavior. Is he going to say, oh, well, never mind, Mr. Evans, have a nice night? Of course not. Do you think that the loved ones of that person that I would have killed would say, oh, well, if it's acceptable to you, we're still going to miss our loved one, but yeah, we forgive you. You have a nice day. Of course not. What about medicine? Do we demand absolutes in medicine? Of course. We make sure that all medicine goes through a very rigorous testing. Not that there's just some chemist sitting in a lab that's picking a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, putting it in a little pill capsule and throwing it in a bottle. Would you take that pill? If you just went and grabbed a little bit of this, a little bit of this, you ask them, well, is this going to help me or kill me? That's true for me, that'll help you. That's my perception that it's going to help you. You ever going to put that in your mouth? I know I sure wouldn't. But what happens when we go into society? Like I said, we've been told time and time again, and if you haven't yet, you will be, that absolutes do not exist. And we turn around and say they do exist. See, if we just try saying it without giving examples, what do we hear? We hear things like, you're a bigot if you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. You're intolerant if you think that there is only one way to heaven. You're a hateful, intolerant bigot. First off, look at that word tolerant and intolerant, right? That's what's always thrown out there. You're an intolerant, the list goes on and on and on with words they like to tack on behind it. But what is tolerance in the first place? Tolerance is saying that you will tolerate something. It means you don't agree with it, but you tolerate it. See, you don't have to agree with everything in order to be tolerant. And notice how that statement is always one-sided. I'm intolerant because my view differs with their view. Well, wouldn't that make them intolerant too? All of a sudden, I'm a bigot if I believe marriage should be one way, the opposite way from that person. Well, doesn't that mean that they're a bigot to me? Notice how this is always one-sided and only one-sided. The other thing that we'll constantly be told is you are narrow-minded. Here's one thing people most time don't think of though, is you're darn right we're narrow-minded. Truth is narrow. See, 4 plus 4 is 8 and only 8. 4 plus 4 cannot be 7.99999 or 8.111111. 4 plus 4 is only 8. Truth is narrow. And we should know this. We should know that Jesus warned us about this, didn't he? See, in Matthew 7:13, he says this. He says, enter through the narrow gate. The gate is wide and the road is broad that leads to destruction. Right? But then he says, and those that enter through it are many. How narrow the gate and how constricted the road is that leads to life. And those that find it are few. We are told that our lives should be narrow. Does this mean to be hateful to people, though? Of course not. But it also does not mean that we need to be accepting everything that is out there, even when society tells us that we must. So, this in closing. Excuse me. The next thing that I want you to make sure you remember is when you are talking to someone about relativism. Just let them talk. After a bit, they will show the flaws in their own thinking. The best place I have ever seen this happen was on a debate on this subject, as if truth really exists. Okay? And it was between Greg Koukl and Dr. Marvin Meyer. So think about this for a second. Meyer is coming in saying that truth does not exist. Absolute truth does not exist. Scary thing is he's an elder in his church. He's a follower of Christ. But these are the claims he's making. He is claiming that it is true that there is no truth. Remember, we had talked about that before. He's coming to this place to debate Mr. Koukl, to give things that he says are true to show that truth doesn't exist. See, and he says things in a way that shows the flaws so well. In one part, he says that truth claims are always articulated in human language, which falters before the absolute. Truth claims are always articulated. Isn't that an absolute truth claim? A little bit later on, he said, we need to talk. We must talk. But all of our language, everything we say is wrong in some important ways. A lot more absolutes here, isn't it? My favorite, though, is he's getting towards the end. And then he says this. He says, truth claims are all theories. Truth claims are all theories. And listen very close here, because here's the important part of the statement. This is what he says, right? He said, whatever we suppose about absolute truth claims is based upon a statement of truth. Nothing we can say can be proved. All truth claims are never absolute and are only relative. How many absolute claims did he say there? Right? We see the words all, nothing, all, never, only, everything, always. But yet he is trying to argue, saying that nothing can be that way. See, if you let somebody talk long enough, they will show the faults themselves. Okay? But what is the important thing here? Remember what I said at the beginning. 1 Peter 3:15. The last three words, with gentleness and respect. If we are not doing that, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing nothing but arguing. I had said that it will become very clear to you that relativism exists once you enter college. I've given you a lot of the stats. But here's another thing I want you to think of. A lot of times you are paying a lot of money to go to a college, to go to a university, to be taught that it is true that truth does not exist. Please be prepared. I was curious to see how much money changes hands to make this happen, right? And when I was looking at the stats for the average four-year degree for the class of 2016 is just about $37,000. Okay? 2016, the average professor makes $127,000, just under $127,000. Now, there is about 1.7 million professors and about 22.1 million students, college students, entering into the colleges at the beginning of 2016. If you do the math, that puts it at really close to $421 billion exchanging hands, not including all of the other staffing, to be told that it is true that truth does not exist. Are you seeing the cracks in this foundation? I would actually go as far to say as that the foundation is destroyed. It has crumbled on itself. People just have not realized it yet. If you are going to be going to a Christian university, please do not think that you just dodged a bullet. Because unfortunately, this goes on in Christian universities as well. Remember when I said only about 32% of born-again Christians believe that something can be absolutely true? Or absolutely false? Or absolutely right? Or absolutely wrong? That means that you have got a lot of people in a Christian university that make these claims of relativism as well. I had heard a while ago about at a Christian university, a Christian professor, she walks into her class. She goes in and she asks her class, raise your hand if you are God. Of course, nobody raised their hand, right? Then she said this. She said, God knows truth. She goes and she writes this on the board, actually. She writes, God knows truth. All truth is God's truth. God is truth. Then she writes on the board, but you are not God, so you cannot know truth. She sets her chalk down and walks out of the room and leaves. At a Christian university by a Christian professor. Now, those first statements, are they true? Those first four. Yeah. Does that mean that the last one is true? See, she made the same mistake I pointed out time and time again, that when statements like this are made, there's one person that claims to have the knowledge. See, this lady professor, she says that she knows that we can't know truth. She knows the truth, that you can't know truth. This is the claim. We can't function in relativism. Relativism can't hold itself up. I hope you have seen that tonight. I hope you have seen that it doesn't work in society when we put it to a full test. You would not accept a lot of these things in your life. Do you accept not knowing for sure the truth if God exists? Do you accept the claims that all religions can be true? Do you accept the claim that whatever I do, I'm a good person so I can go to heaven? Here's the thing. If you demand absolutes when it comes to your safety, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your medicine, if you demand absolutes when it comes to those, why aren't you demanding to know if God exists, and if He exists, what it takes to get to heaven? Remember, C.S. Lewis said that this is of the most important. It cannot be moderately important if it is true. It is my prayer that you guys will come back each week, each class, so that you can know more about God. I'm going to give you evidence. I want you to make your decision for yourself. Okay? You guys have gotten to the point where this religion has to be your religion. You cannot just follow underneath your parents. It can't just be your parents' God. It has to be yours. It has to be your belief. I don't know how many of you guys know Sean McDowell and Josh McDowell, but see, both of them are apologists, okay? And when Josh was younger, he said he was like 18 or 19 years old, he went to his dad, who at the time was one of the most famous people in the arena. He still is, really. But he had went to him and he told me, "Oh, Dad, I don't know if I believe what you believe." You know what his dad said? His dad said, "That's great, son." And John's like, wait, I don't think you're listening. I just told you I don't know if I believe like you believe that Jesus Christ exists. He goes, no, I heard you. He says, you cannot have my belief. You must have your own. And he just told Sean this. He said, I just pray, I just implore you to go where the truth leads you. See, this is the same thing I tell my kids. See, I have no doubt that if they are willing to honestly look at evidence, honestly look at the facts, and go where it leads them, that they will walk right up to God's throne. I have no doubt, as long as they're willing to honestly look. And I beg you guys to do the same. You know, if you guys ever have any questions, please ask me. I don't care what the question is. I don't have all the answers. But I will move heaven and earth to try and find them for you. Okay? Why don't we close in prayer, and then we'll talk afterwards. Lord, I thank you for tonight. I thank you for being able to reach out to these wonderful people. I thank you for having the ability to know truth, to have the ability to look at the evidence, to be able to see if you're there behind all of it, Lord. And I thank you for everything that you have done for us, from giving us the ability to breathe, to live, and most of all, to be able to join you in eternity, even so we are not worthy, Lord. In your glorious name we pray. Amen.